You're listening to episode 50, Eileen's story, a son with epidermolysis bullosa on the Child Life On Call podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
He's paving his own path, and we're paving our own path, and I think that's how I was inclined to think.
Hello, everyone. I am so happy that you are here today. I am Katie Taylor, host of the Child Life On Call podcast, and this is episode 50, y'all. You know, I have been kind of thinking about this for the past few episodes, and it's just such a huge milestone. I'm so honored today for a couple reasons. One is that you get to meet Eileen, who you just heard a little bit of her story. She is just such a well-spoken advocate and amazing mom to her two kiddos, and I just can't wait for you to hear her story. And also, one of my very cherished and very smart colleagues, Annie Jones, is going to be the one doing the interview with her. And I just love when Annie is such a part of this team, and so I can't wait for you to be able to hear her interview style and just the way that she talks to Eileen and gets to know her and her story. So thank you both to Annie and Eileen. If you've been here before, you know what I'm about to say. Please rate and review this podcast. It helps other parents and professionals be able to find us. And nothing is more important than sharing what a parent's experience is like, because parents are the not so secret tool to be able to provide excellent care to a pediatric patient and their family. And then this podcast also serves the purpose of providing community for parents as they share their stories. You know, parents who listen, I'm so glad that you're here because you're getting a chance to hear experiences, stories, amazing advice, specific things to do and how to advocate for your child that you may never hear before. So rate and review this podcast. Please share it so that parents can find out this information and get some extra tools in their toolbox. I also love when I hear that actual medical professionals and students are listening to this because they're getting a window into some patient experience that they may have never heard before or just don't get to hear in their daily tasks. So parents, thank you so much for sharing your stories. Eileen, specifically you today. We're just so glad that you're here. So let's not waste any more time and get straight to Annie and Eileen's conversation.
My family and I, we're from Texas originally. My husband, Chris, is from Houston, and we have two boys, Leo and Brady. Leo's 6, and Brady's 4.5 now. And we're originally from Texas, but we now live in Colorado. We moved here in 2018. So Brady, our youngest son, has what's called epidermolysis bullosa. Specifically Recessive Dystrophic Epidermolysis Bullosa. And just because that's a mouthful, we usually just call it RDEB, RDEB. So what that means is that Brady was born without properly functioning collagen 7. Collagen 7 is a protein in our skin that I think of as being the Velcro. So you can slide down a slide and your skin doesn't shift and fall apart. You can put a shirt on and the tag in your shirt doesn't, rub a blister. For Brady, what happens is that because it doesn't properly function, his skin layers sort of lay on top of one another, and anything that might cause friction, like falling on the ground really rips his skin layers apart and causes deep wounding. Or if he puts a shoe on and it, rubs in its weird way, it'll cause a blister. It's just, he's very sensitive to it, and that is what his type of epidermolysis bullosa is called. It's something that he had inherited from my husband and I. We didn't know we had it. We didn't know we were carriers for it. It's a very rare disease. And, so I had a very normal pregnancy, healthy on my end, and nothing alarming, not any ultrasounds or blood work. And this is also because EB is so rare that there aren't tests in utero to test for it unless you're looking for it, knowing that mom or dad has that gene. So Brady was born on July 2nd of 2016, and I had a regular delivery. Not expecting anything. My husband and I didn't even know if he was going to be a boy or a girl, so that's what we thought our surprise would be. So when Brady was born, I was like 2 days past my due date, and just for, precaution and protocol at the hospital, there was the requirement of having a NICU team there just to make sure he didn't aspirate on meconium or have any difficulties, which is just kind of an incredible coincidence. So Brady, when we delivered Brady, I remember looking down and just seeing that his little feet were both just bloody and kind of beefy and like raw. And I looked down, and my husband was supposed to sort of tell me if it was a boy or a girl, and he looked down and he really composed himself and looked at me, and he just said, "It's a boy." And it was such a joy on his end. I'm sure he was freaking out inside because he didn't know what was going on, but his face was so consumed with love. It was just, I remember that really well. So at that point, we had the NICU team already in the room, which is just amazing. And they had the same looks on their faces. And I just remember them grabbing sort of what I would think of as like a produce grocery bag kind of, and like filling it with kind of a warm gel or lubricant or something. And I remember them putting his feet in that and swaddling him. And I looked at Chris and I said, "I gotta hold him. I have to hold him. I can't. They can't just take him away." And so Chris really advocated, and they said, "Well, you have about 30 seconds, and then we need to take him down to the NICU to get him tested." After I held him and they really just whisked him downstairs, I was recovering and sort of wondering if this was like a nightmare. It's just so, you have this child so safe within you, and then life just changes in a moment. And he was gone, and I remember feeling just desperate for him. And so my husband took me down in my little wheelchair post-delivery, and I remember going down to the NICU, and I remember walking kind of up to his little bassinet where he was, and luckily he had an isolation pod. They were running a lot of tests to see if this was a bacterial infection or a viral infection or something that they could treat, which my husband and I always say, like, we just wish it was that. And so I remember going down there, and just there was this warming light over his bassinet, and he was covered in like Vaseline. He was just this like beautiful, greasy, shimmering, my baby, but also like had wraps on his feet, and I just was staring at him, and I looked up at the little board above his bassinet that always says kind of who the doctor is and who the patient is, and it just said, "Baby boy Attar, Epidermolysis Bullosa ? And I am a nurse, and I looked at that, and I knew parts of the word. I mean, I knew lysis, and I knew epidermolysis, epidermis, bullosa, blisters, and I just remember, I think it was so, I remember there was what I would say, like maybe a resident there who was trying to know what to say to me. And all I cared about, I didn't care. I didn't want to look up the disease. I didn't want to look it up. But I remember just looking at her saying, if you know what this is he going to be in pain? Is he going to have pain his whole life? Like, that was my one question. Because knowing the terms, that's what I think of as painful. And, I could tell that in her face, it broke her heart to tell me that if it is epidermolysis bullosa, that it is painful. And I remember her telling us, well, there are lots of ways to treat it with morphine. And I think I was just numb, but also just so mesmerized by this child that was, 12 hours ago was within me and now is out. And I don't know, it was a shocking moment.
Tell me about kind of the idea of you being a nurse, noticing that you and your team were all kind of learning about this together and what that was like.
When Brady was delivered, we had a covering obstetrician, and she really looked at me with sort of, of course, wide eyes. I think it was the only time she'd ever seen this. And she asked me a plethora of questions about when I sought prenatal care, and did we have any diagnosis of amniotic banding, which can happen. And I just said, no, everything was fine. I have no clue. And just watching, her eyes were full of what I would say fear and just disbelief. And I think, so when he went down to the NICU, they really ran pretty quickly tests to rule out infection, which they did. And we learned in about, I would say, 24 to 36 hours that his diagnosis was EB, because they had done blood work to rule out the things that otherwise, if it weren't EB, it would be. But EB is so, of course, rare, but also presents differently, and there are different types of EB, and different skin layers can be affected in those different types. And so they told us within about 36 hours that is really what they thought he had. So we had to wait to do more diagnostic testing about what type of EB Brady had. So we were there. Brady was in the NICU for about 2 weeks total. On day 2 of Brady's life, they took a skin biopsy of healthy skin, and with that biopsy saw that he had very low levels of collagen 7 in that skin biopsy, which would indicate that he had recessive dystrophic. He also, about 8 weeks or so later, had a blood test to confirm it. So I think the hardest part of that experience, in retrospect, was that as a nurse, I'm around a lot of caregiver, physicians and medical personnel, and I could tell that they were very nervous and very fearful, and they were trying to make a diagnosis that was correct. But we had some saying, well, he only has skin off his feet, so it's not going to be maybe as bad as you think. And we didn't see in his throat if there were any blisters, and they sort of were giving us a prognosis that it might be less than it is. And so that was really hard. Just knowing that, I just remember in my gut feeling that they were also fearful of what this might be. But EB is so rare that it presents so differently that it's really hard to know how severe it's going to be, or even what type it's going to be.
So is there even a way, or do they have any kind of prognosis for EB in general or for Brady?
Okay, so Brady, or I'll give you a little background of kind of why it's hard. Because it's so rare, and EB is sort of a blanket term for blistering skin diseases. And so there are certain types of EB that affect different layers of your skin. So Brady's affects collagen 7. There are types of EB that affect your laminal layer. So it's such a broad, we really had to measure it, to make sure he had indeed inherited it from us, and it was dystrophic. Dystrophic is sort of synonymous with scarring, meaning that where he wounds, scars can form and do form. So it can cause contracture. So dystrophic, Brady's is a specific type. Brady's type is one of the most severe types. Brady's type has been hard to we are working right now on creating registries of people with these conditions because it's so broad. There have been people that might have said, oh, my grandmother or my great-grandmother didn't have nails on her hand or had wounded easily. There isn't a really specific set of symptoms or characteristics. So that, that makes it difficult to sort of know how many cases we have, what its prevalence is, et cetera. So I think that's also what made it hard for our medical team, was because it takes a while to sort of determine prognosis, of what that is. But as of now, the prognosis for recessive dystrophic EB is that they will wound and it will scar. So if he wounds on his feet or any jointed areas, those areas scar, which means they sort of form contractures, which are burn patients have the same thing, and they tighten its scar tissue around those areas, which makes them have a difficulty, standing or moving their wrists. Brady's fingers were perfect at birth, but there's an internal scarring that occurs in his type that makes his fingers curl in and web together and become useless if we don't do everything we can to keep them open and break up that scar tissue. So this type is also prone to squamous cell carcinoma, which is unfortunately at this point 100% lethal. And because of the chronic wounding and the chronic inflammation in areas of wounds, it leads to that type of cancer. So they have limbs that are removed, or unfortunately death around age 30. So it's one of the worst types. So it was hard to get that prognosis on their behalf because of sort of how hard it is to pinpoint, even within the same subtype, even within recessive dystrophic EB, there are children who are very mild and there are children who are incredibly severe. It just depends on that mutation.
Do you feel like almost not having a really specific answer for prognosis, was that a comforting thing for you, or did that make it more discouraging or frustrating?
That's such a good question. And I think it was more comforting. As a mother, you look at your child and you see your child, and I remember looking at Brady like the day he was born and just thinking, gosh, you have wisdom beyond my own. There's something about you that's so powerful. And I feel that his journey is his. And because maybe there isn't such a cut and dry, set of symptoms that it made me sort of more at peace that, like, to have faith in my child and to know that my child, I can't determine what my child will do. When he came out with no skin on his feet, I was like, he's never going to walk. He will never walk. Like, how could he? His feet I see as like, I just see raw feet, and he's running now. So it's just, I think for me, it was, of course, as a nurse, I want to know all the answers that I can, and I will never stop working toward that. But I think that there is a comfort in knowing that we're paving our own path, and it's his unique path. I've always said that, it can be really, isolating and awkward when people ask what Brady has and they just kind of become pitiful. They're very sorry and they're like so sad. And I think to myself, when I would ever spend time away from Brady, whether it was like running to the store, and I would just think of textbook Recessive Dystrophic EB, and it would like make me super sad and anxious and just heartbroken. And then I go home and he's just smiling and playing with his brother, and I'm like, this is not you. Like, because people will Google it and they're just so sad. And on the other, I don't love that. I don't like pitiful, people saying, oh, poor guy. It drives me crazy because he's not. He's so dear and he's so joyful. And so I just remember like that. He's paving his own path and we're paving our own path. And I think I just that's how I was inclined to think at the beginning.
That's incredible. And that makes me kind of lead into my next question of just wondering, you talk about Brady and Leo playing. How did family cope with that diagnosis, and especially Leo, when you brought baby brother home, and how that transition was?
Yeah, you're going to make me cry. So family, we have the most incredible family. They were heartbroken, completely heartbroken. We all are. We are heartbroken every day. But, my husband, Chris, and I really just believe in empowering Brady. And, this is what it is. Like, this is what it is. And this is our life. And so there's no room for sorrow. There's room to just empower him, and when he's seeing a stinker, put your foot down. Something that I think is hard for people that are not born with this disease is that we have such a different level of what pain is, and so we sort of project how we would feel if we were in that place, which is, it really is, you can't even believe just wounds and what he can do with the wounds he has, and how, you feel like if that were you would be just crying in your bed, But I think it's really important, and something that our families have really taken to, is that we cannot compare how we perceive pain with how he does, because that's his baseline. And so that can really bring comfort. Leo, his older brother, that's all Leo has known. Leo has been and always is he's such a powerful influence on Brady. He's Brady's hero and Brady is his. But, if Leo tells Brady to stop acting out, Brady is militant. He's like, got it. There's just Leo has a real tenderness about him, an incredible tenderness about him. And a side note that I don't know if I shared, but when I had Leo, we found out when he was in utero that he had kidney problems that could lead to renal transplant, like a kidney transplant. And Leo has had several procedures and surgeries, and currently has one functioning kidney, which is wonderful. We only need one. So but he was someone we always thought would be our medical child, our child that will need the care when he someday has to have a transplant or whatever. And it's just such I remember like always believing that this child that came along would take care of Leo. And, what did I know? And Leo is such a dear, he will come in the middle of the night to our room if Brady needs us. He will say, Brady, can I help you carry this or help you downstairs? Leo has such a beautiful heart, and he's wonderful. But we also like encourage them to be brothers and never want to put any burden on Leo to be a caregiver. And I think it's just been a really neat thing to see the mutual admiration that they have for each other. And, I think the bottom line is children just inspire us. Like we adults can get really sad, but looking at them, it really brightens your day. Yeah, it's hard when grandparents watch dressing changes and their hearts ache and they want to take that ache away from all of us. But we look at the boys and how light they are, and they don't feel sorry for themselves, and that's just so powerful.
Yeah, I think what you said too about just realizing that Brady's baseline is so different than ours.
Yeah.
And projecting our feelings on him isn't fair.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's just not even accurate. It's just not even, yeah, exactly. It's not an accurate thing to do. So it takes away your desire to pity him. And so I think that's what is so hard when people pity children, whether it's Brady or others with, chronic illnesses, because they are fine, quote unquote. Like they are determining their journey. They are empowered. They are much cooler than me. and like never, ever, I just never want, there to be pity or for my children to feel pity or that this is any way, a way that weakens him. And that's so important in Brady, especially because of how it progresses with age. And, I tell people how it affects every part of his body, truly, every part, his skin, his muscles, his joints, his nerves, his GI tract, his eyes blister. And we have so many therapies on board to work against this disease taking over. And we will do anything. We stretch his hands at night. We have therapies. We have splints he sleeps in. It's just, he works against this disease taking him over constantly. And we have to empower him, and we're so proud of him. He just teaches all of us courage and humility.
Oh, I bet he's just a lesson every day in so many ways.
Yeah.
What are some things looking back, maybe that you're proud of yourself or that you've learned about yourself in all of this?
So many parents say with their children of special needs or people that they know that are differently abled and have that they learn so much and it changes them forever. But until you have a child, that is the truest thing I can imagine. I remember describing to myself that I used to view the world, I was always aware and loving and just I feel like I'm a generally good person, but I experienced the world on this sort of one plane. I'd look, straight ahead and just see what life was. And I felt physically after learning about Brady that I just came out from underneath water. My world is so much bigger. It just expanded my horizons. Eileen, you can do this, or Brady can do this. Your view right now of what is courage or what is strength or what is joy is better now because of Brady. It's finding joy in like really what most people would think is small things, but they're such, for our family, like such celebrations. Like, for example, today we were hiking and Brady, there was 2 areas on our path where we had to step on big rocks over a stream, and he was so scared, and we encouraged him and pushed him a little bit, because we always will, and he jumped over them, not jumped, I mean, he stepped with my help, and like the day could be, like my kid walked across, these stones and faced his fear and showed courage, and like that just humbles you to your core and teaches you sort of what we are made of and what we're capable of. That has been my other, just what we as humans are made of. We are made of such incredible stuff, and children are beautiful and amazing and strong. And yeah, I think that's what it's taught. I remember sitting in the NICU when we were there, and I was looking around at all the babies on their ventilators and mothers who were just so tired holding their babies and these just children. And I was thinking to myself, these children, these babies are not choosing to like do what they do each day. They're not like, today I don't really feel like, breathing on my own without an oxygen, supplement. Like they just showed me how instinctively we fight and we are resilient. And I think that's what's been so profound, that like, yeah, as adults, we kind of sort of determine our limits in certain ways, but we are capable of so much.
I love that. I love just your perspective and saying how it just opened your eyes to what courage and joy and those things really are. And I think that's true. Just how children just innately fight and want to be better.
It's so incredible. I mean,
when do we lose that as adults?
Right. Yep. And I worked with adults, and I love being an adult cardiac nurse, but I just looked at these kids and I'm like, no one is complaining here. Like, they are fighting, and that is so innate and so beautiful and such a part of how we're made. And that is so humbling to me. And now that Brady is sort of, as he will grow up and go in between those sort of innate human instincts and what he's going to learn, we just always want him to know he can. And we want to be examples of that. We will do anything to get what we want, what we need, who we want to be. It's just so incredible. This life is such a gift, no matter what. That's the thing, is like, it's not a wasted life. It's a rebirth.
Absolutely.
For us, we don't have it. Yeah.
So what, if you could even succinctly, what would you want to tell, or what do you tell other parents when they have a diagnosis of EB?
It just, first of all, it determines kind of what type of EB, and meaning that there are some that, I have in the past 4 years seen way too many. There's a type of EB called junctional EB, where children don't often live past age 1. And when you have a new mother saying, this is the diagnosis, and you're sick, because that you will see in the next year that child will not be here anymore. And so, but there's the same, depending, even if it's a mild diagnosis or a severe diagnosis, everybody is scared and worried. And I remember so specifically 2 or 3 moms that reached out to me. Our community is so incredible, and we had a Facebook group, and they helped me through more than any doctor could. I could text at some point with a symptom or something in the middle of the night, and one would say, oh, that's just this, don't take him to the ER. That's, unfortunately part of this disease. And that was so incredible for me. And so when I was told, I was told it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And it is. It is. I have trouble saying that because I know that everyone sort of handles this differently. It is going to be okay. You're going to see your child be more than you ever imagined. I think that's like the solid thing I say, is that maybe not, it's all going to be okay. But even though in my situation, I know that we have more joy than sorrow, even though we are very sad and it stinks, but that your child will show you more than you will ever believe at this point that could be possible. You will not believe what your child is made of. And that is something I think is something I can advise, as objectively as possible. And also just, I think that I also would say that you're not alone, and to always know that at least I am a safe place. If you ever have fears, I'd love to help you. If you have bandaging techniques that, or you have a blister and you don't know how to bandage it, I'm here to help you, and so is this community. Here's where the medical teams are and the doctors are that know this disease, and you're not alone, and just, you're, no question is stupid. I mean, still to this day, it's just, it's such a rare disease with so many different things. I ask questions still that I'm like, is this a silly question? It's just, we are a community, and it's such an isolating condition. But that, believe in your child. Just believe in your child. Empower your child. This disease can take over so quickly, and just tell them they can. Just, redefine what joy is. Redefine what success is. It's like for Brady, nothing. He may not be able to run as much as his older brother, and he might need to take a break, but that doesn't bother him as much as like if someone didn't include him. Like sitting out on the sidelines is so much more painful for him. So just empower them and know that they will humble you. Just know this is actually just it's going to be a beautiful journey, and it's going to be full of everything. And I know this is a little, I'm kind of stemming off of that, but people are often like, how do you get through your days? Like, how do you, looking at your child, because, my son Leo has kidney, but he doesn't suffer daily. He doesn't suffer. I mean, the worst thing a parent can think of is their child suffering, and Brady suffers daily. And how do you reconcile that, and how do you find it within you to go on? And other than the things I've told you before, like today, earlier, just a few minutes ago, is that, number one, like, none of us are promised tomorrow. I can look ahead and have all these worried thoughts that think, you know what, Eileen, you could be, your days, you don't know what your future is. You don't know. None of us have that promise. And just that we all suffer. People suffer in different ways, and this is our suffering. And we find such a joy in the fact that our family loves each other, and I have a loving husband, and we have, everyone suffers in their own way, and nobody's is less or more. But this is just part of being a human, is the suffering that it's associated with it. So we all suffer, and no one's promised tomorrow. Those are really the two things that get me knowing that it's okay. Yeah, some days are horrible, and you bring Brady to go play on the playground, and he's so happy, and he tries something for the first time and rips skin and off his entire hand, and we have to leave, and it's just EB rearing its ugly head, and it's horrible and angering. But we're not. We are working toward a cure, and we will not stop until there's something.
Yeah. So what, outside of the community that you found in this, what are some resources that have really helped you in coping and in learning?
So there is an organization called DEBRA, DEBRA, and it's really its purpose is to sort of educate on how to care for someone with EB. It's a wonderful resource. When Brady was born, I was referred to them first, and they were so good about how to bathe. I mean, I even helped tell our dermatologist like how to bathe, gave them that resource, just sort of how to handle a newborn with EB, how to bandage in certain ways. They have a really incredible program that saved us. So EB, you have to have very specific bandaging. Bandaging is right now the only treatment, so full body bandaging. And because of EB's rarity, trying to get bandaging covered through insurance is a fight. It's about $8,000 to $10,000 a month without insurance, and so we had to fight a lot in the midst of us fighting to, because many insurance companies are saying, okay, we will cover these bandages, but the thing is Brady won't get better. Like, this is what he has, so it has to be. It's not like you're covering this for just a few months or something. So it's something, rarity really translates into that horrible circumstance. So one thing that DEBRA provides is they have a donation and distribution program for families who do not have coverage through their insurance for the bandages. They will ship them out to you because it's the only life-saving treatment. Brady could not live without bandages. And so we had several shipments from them while we were in between fighting for coverage. And on the other end of it, they have a donation program. So once we got Brady's supplies covered, if he outgrew certain bandages or doesn't use them anymore, we would send all unopened bandages in a donation back to DEBRA. We do that all the time. He may have used this when he was younger, but we ordered a ton of it, and now we're going to send it back to them. So that's a really wonderful resource at that point. You learn fairly quickly as a parent what works. I mean, it takes about a year or two, but you sort of become aware of what works. To put salt water in the bath so that it doesn't sting wounds, to wrap with certain bandages. But then you think, okay, we got to stop this disease. This needed to be cured yesterday. So I was so honored to be put on the board of EB Research Partnership. They are primarily focused on finding a cure curing EB. So they are dedicated to the research, and they are a phenomenal organization. And so I sort of look at DEBRA as those, as an organization that really focuses on caring for one with EB, and they really do have great resources. Kind of, even taking your kid to school, they have resources on teaching teachers about it, and those kind of things. But EB Research Partnership is focused on finding the cure, and so you sort of you do your bandages every day, every other day. Bandage changes for Brady take 4 hours every other day at least. And if there's a wound in between that needs bandaging, it's on the off day. There's no off days. But EB Research Partnership is sort of where we find our hope these days, is that how can we, the science is there, the money is needed, the support, the awareness, just knowing about the disease really, really changes people and really is so moving. And these kids just need to have an end to their suffering. And so those are the two resources that are really important in our community.
And EB Research Partnership has a big event coming up, I believe, next week. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so EB Research Partnership has an incredible event coming up. It'll be on November 18th, and it'll be at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is going to be star-studded. We have really been so fortunate to have an awareness in that world. Just to go back, in 2010, EB Research Partnership was actually founded by Jill and Ed Vedder, Eddie Vedder is the kind of front man of the band Pearl Jam, and they have an incredible following. And Jill in herself is such a social activist. She's just an incredible person. And Jill grew up with a neighbor who had EB, and it really was so moving to her, and so it just was so, shocking. And she couldn't, as most people say, like, there's no cure, they live this forever. And so Jill and Ed Vedder, along with two other families, formed the EB Research Partnership. And this year has been such an incredible, they have their hearts are so amazing, and they, along with our whole team at EBRP, have put together an incredible fundraiser called Venture into Cures. So like I said, November 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be streamed on Amazon, as well as ebresearch.org. They can find more information there, but it is probably the most far-reaching and just incredible fundraisers we've done, which is so wild in the stage of this pandemic, where we had built such momentum last year and really were and are making progress with these clinical trials for curing and treating EB, and then their involvement has been amazing. And we have Renee Zellweger and Laura Dern and Adam Sandler and Bradley Cooper, and it's going to be so amazing. So we would love, they do a beautiful job of portraying our children in a hopeful way and not a sad way, in a tasteful way. And it's as much as I wish my child didn't suffer from it, the community I've never known anything like it. They're just incredible people who are so devoted, and it's just such a sweet reflection of humanity. So we would love if anyone could join in on that and just check it out.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I am excited to watch that next week for sure. I'm also just so appreciative of this time to talk with you, Eileen. Thanks for giving up part of your family vacation to be with us, to talk to our listeners and just share more about your life and Brady's life and EB. What a gift.
Thank you so much. Thank you for reaching out. It's isolating to have, a child with a rare disease, and it's so physical, and people look and they stare, and but all we want is to teach people about it and hope that and believe that there is going to be a cure within his lifetime to ease his suffering. So you guys, I have to say that in our experiences, again, this will make me cry, but with Brady and his procedures, there are so many, ways he could have such a negative association with that, because he has constant procedures. And our child life specialists are literally lifesavers. They come in and I could offer Brady my iPad and he yells at me and he doesn't want it, but then when you guys come in, he is all for it, and he looks for it. He gets so excited when we say that, oh, we're gonna see Amanda, who's our favorite right now. And I mean, she's so fabulous. And he just gets so excited, and the consistency of knowing you'll be there. That's a really trusting kind of, especially with Brady, who in his disease, nothing is consistent. He could walk out one day and be very happy and have a great day, and has a blister in his throat that makes him not able to swallow just within hours. And so his trust and just knowing that he has someone like you guys to be there is something. As a mother, of course, I can be at ease, which is not easy. I can kind of let my guard down as a bodyguard and hand him over for a minute for you guys to play with him. And that is, in the midst of a disease that's so physically painful, all that we hope is that he finds joy in whatever that is. If he has wounds, but he's laughing and playing, I don't want to focus on the wounds. We want to focus on the joy. And so you guys bring just a really special element to that experience. And just never forget it, never lose it, because it's really impactful. You guys are the best.
Well, Eileen, thank you so much. It's an honor to do our jobs and get to be a part of such incredible families and just intimate moments like the ones you talked about earlier of Brady stepping across the rocks, and just getting to hear about those. So thank you so much. You talked about Brady's threshold for pain and procedures just being so far beyond our own. And I'm also so inspired by yours for the intense daily care for your sons and your passion just to advocate for the EB community at large. I love what you said about that it's just a beautiful journey for all of us that's full of everything, from suffering to championed moments. So thank you so much for just sharing. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in and just listening to Eileen and Brady's story. On the show notes page, you'll see the information for the resources that we talked about, as well as the link for the incredible star-studded event on November 18th at 8 Eastern Time. It's going to be streamed on Amazon, so super easy to tune in and watch. I'm pumped to watch it, and I hope you guys will too. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much to Annie and Eileen for such a great conversation, and Eileen for being so vulnerable and sharing your experiences. There's no doubt you are helping other parents as they listen to this. Please rate and review the podcast and follow along with us on social media, Child Life on Call on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Instagram is where we do the bulk of our content. And as you may or may not know, we have book lists with different resources about specific subjects. We have ways to tackle different stresses in your life. We have supportive content. We have education about medical stuff. So make sure you're there and checking it out. Thanks for joining us, and I will see you soon.